Yet we are live.
Okay, great, Jon. I am so pleased to be talking to you tonight. Thank you for joining us on, I think it's your evening over there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's 8 p.m. So I'm having I just ate dinner and I'm having a nice tea.
Wonderful. Whereabouts, just the general locality, whereabouts are you talking to us
I
from?
live in Costa Mesa, which is about 40 to 50 miles south of Los Angeles. It gives me the anonymity I need to think freely and come up with my own stories without being influenced by the industry, which, by the way, is crucial, while still at the same time giving me access to all of the tools of the industry, studios, actors, camera, all that stuff. So it's really an ideal location to be a filmmaker.
It sounds like it. Well, I gave you a little tip earlier that where I'm representing the students in Year 9 English at Canobolas Rural Technology High School, which is located in the central west of New South Wales. We've been working on, we're in the pre-planning stage of documentaries. It's part of a unit where we're learning how to articulate our personal point of view on topics, contemporary social issues. And we're really excited about the opportunity to ask you a few questions. Someone who is actually in the industry and has made films.
I have actually filmed a couple documentaries too. So
Fantastic.
yeah.
Well, I'm keen to hear what you've got to say today. Now, the class actually last week got together and brainstormed some questions, because one of the things we've been talking about is how to have an effective interview. So, and ask questions that'll get the most out of the interviewee. So you're our guinea pig for this one. They've come
Sweet.
up with great questions. So when you're ready, can I fire the first one at you?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the first one is, how did your passion for filmmaking begin, and what was it that inspired you?
A lot of people get into filmmaking because they want to be famous or they want to be rich. This, I think, is a very bad motivation because it's really, really hard and the likelihood of getting rich is not big. But that doesn't mean that you can't make a difference. It's way more important as a filmmaker to have something to say, because if you have something to say, then that allows your project to have kind of a vision and a focus. You can choose what it is you want to say, and then either the thing that you're recording matches that or it doesn't, and then you can make creative decisions based on that. So I spent a long time kind of figuring out who I am and what I thought about a variety of subjects. And then really, when I encountered certain ideas, my opinion became quite clear. And I can articulate that. If you can think it, if you can say it to a friend, then you want to translate it into something maybe you can write down. And if you can write it down, then what you want to do is figure out if you can translate what was written down into a more visual medium. Because a camera is where you put the camera is more than just capturing the action. You can say things with the camera position. So it's an incredibly powerful medium. And I figured that if I was going to try and change the world for the better, that presently there's nothing that's even close to as effective a tool for social change as film, movies.
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of what we've been talking about. Was there a particular moment when you said, movies, film, this is it? Or did it?
No, I'm still having that debate. When it's good news, I absolutely love my job. When it's bad news, and I got some bad news recently, it's like maybe I should just go into get a job working at one of the local oil refineries or the mall at Starbucks or something, because it is a brutally difficult thing to do. Because if it were easy, everybody would be doing it, and a lot of people are doing it on YouTube, and to get noticed with the abundance of people who are doing it is hard, unless, again, you've got something to say specifically on something that generally isn't covered and that has value or meaning to people.
Yeah, so we've been talking about getting involved in public conversations. So there's lots of
That's
social
it.
around at the moment, and just adding our voice to that public conversation, saying that we have something to say and we have something to contribute.
That's
So do
it.
you
Yeah,
feel that?
I once tried to spend some time defining art, which is notoriously difficult to do, and I came up with three criteria, which is talent, which is something that you can't teach. It's something that some people have, and they're just better at things than other people. Skill, and more often than not, successful filmmakers will have skill more than they'll have talent, because they'll have something to say and they'll get really good at the job. Whereas people with talent often rely on their talent and don't work as hard. So often hard work rises above talent. But if you can get both, and if you can participate in the social dialogue, that's when things transcend simply making a movie or something forgettable and enter into the stage of art, which is culturally transformative, because precisely what you said, you're participating in the current social dialogue.
Interesting. So when you mentioned you've made documentaries, so obviously you felt you had something to say. So when you made your first documentary, how did you begin? What was the first thing you did? How did you turn that idea into something that you could see on the screen?
So there was a rather extraordinary experiment going on in my town. One of the university that I attended, one of the professors was conducting an experiment, and he believed that that homelessness is a solvable problem. That people don't need to be homeless, and it's a choice that we're making as a culture. He spent years gathering statistics about the homeless people in my city of Costa Mesa, and just started building data. And to me, that idea that it's not a persistent problem like I don't know, skin cancer from too much sun, that it's a solvable problem that we don't need to be having, and that the amount of people who suffer from it don't have to do that. That to me was extraordinary. So I started documenting that, and he happened to be a friend of mine, so I could access him directly. And another one of the people who was instrumental in that attempt also happened to be a friend, and I actually connected that friend, who was named Bex, with the professor friend who was named Ed. So I actually helped them, which is something you shouldn't really do as a documentarian. Kind of keep your hands off and get other people to say the things that the argument that you want to make. Unless so kind of like there's two ways to do documentaries, which is the Michael Moore way, where the filmmaker has a specific voice, and that voice kind of interrupts the film or is part of the film, and it's clearly specifically biased. Or a more nuanced kind of dialogue, the way a Ken Burns documentary might be, where he kind of has, it's more of a narrative, and if he can get them, interviews with people.
Okay. So you mentioned that you started with a topic that was close to home in your area, and someone you knew. So you had
yeah. So it was a powerful topic, and I had an inroad to the players. The fact that nobody was really documenting at the time gave me access to a lot of people. So I just went to the city hall meetings, and I asked the city representatives, "Can I interview you?" I asked the people who the city was considering working with, "Can I interview you?" My friend Bex said yes. My friend Ed, the professor, said yes. And everything was going smashingly. And then a buddy of mine and I just went to where the homeless people were, and we started interviewing them so that we could have kind of like a lot of footage from which to craft the most efficient story.
So do you think getting a lot of footage is a good idea, talking to as many people as possible? Or would
it's hard to know when you're documenting something that's real time like that. It's hard to know what's going to be important and what's valuable. So I think that getting as much as possible is a good thing. You got to worry about hard drive space, because footage gets expensive. Either you're talking about film or you're talking about hard drives, and either one gets expensive. Like the current project I'm working on right now is between 500 and 1,500 terabytes.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. So the documentary was probably going to be around 4 to 8 gigabytes of, or 4 to 8 terabytes of space, which is, you just have to factor that in. If you can't do that, you have to be more specific. And or like I said, if you know where you're going, if you have that vision and that voice and that thing you want to say, you can get the interview, and then you can decide this person didn't say anything of value, or you can just cut it down to what you think is of value and only keep that footage. And that's kind of like the way there's a filmmaker named Robert Rodriguez, and he filmed a movie called El Mariachi, which you can get easily on DVD. And the DVD comes with his commentary on how he basically only shot the scenes and shots that he knew he was going to use. And
Wow.
so that's something that you can do too, again, once you have that vision and voice and opinion that you want to express.
So having the vision, you're talking then about the storyboard and the narration, like, sorry, the narrative, the written.
Not, I don't, the storyboard, I mean, you can, like, that's really more important with narrative stuff. I don't think you really need it in documentaries as much. You kind of find the movie in the edit bay. You kind of like like you can only make the story with the stuff that you've got. And so you kind of got to find the story that you've captured that best expresses that vision.
Right. So storyboarding would be better for a scene where actors are, say, reenacting something.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you wouldn't. I mean, maybe like Michael Moore again, who does a lot of, is a really invasive when he says, and here is going to be me in front of the Capitol building where I'm talking to senators, and they might do that, but really the storyboard is more for like visual kind of camera movement continuity, and that doesn't seem to be a necessity as much in documentary, although. Yeah, because it's not really something that you can control quite as well. Like if you're really interviewing people, you may not know how they move, and you may not know where they're going to pause and where that pause is going to be extended and elicit the kind of emotion that you want to cultivate that best expresses the vision that you're trying to get to.
And that's something you would find in the editing stage.
Yeah, yeah. And so probably the most time you're going to spend on the project will be in post-production, getting that edit just as tight as you can so that it says exactly what you want to say and nothing else. But you won't know that until you have the footage.
You've given us lots of really good practical advice there. That's great. Can you take us to a film location and tell us what it sounds like and what it looks like actually filming?
Well, there's two kinds of places that you can film, either in a closed sound stage where you can control the sound and the light and control everything. A lot of Hollywood movies, even when they seem outside or inside, are actually on sound stages, or in the case of Warner Brothers, they'll have backlots. Like Back to the Future was filmed on the backlot of Warner Brothers. All the buildings from Back to the Future, you can go back there on the Universal Studios tour and visit, where Marty got hit by lightning. I don't have the budget for that. And also, I think that it's more effective if you can actually film on location. So with my movie Algorithm that did pretty well, we shot entirely on locations. We didn't have any sound stages at all. Actually, we did have one sound stage, and we didn't end up using the footage. Just because a real place has so much vitality. It will have the real things from the place that you want to film. It will represent the person better. The only issue is you have to worry about the sound. And that's like, people will walk out of a movie for bad sound. They will rarely do it for bad picture. So getting good sound is very, very, very important. More important than getting good picture. In fact, if you'll look at I don't know if your students are old enough to have seen it, but there's a movie called Zero Dark 30, and the first 2 minutes of the movie are just black with audio, and it's gripping. So that's kind of the difference between location shooting, which is pretty much what you'll be in documentaries, or on a sound stage. You may want to get interviews separate with like a white background or a black background and have the person kind of stand out in contrast to that. That depends on kind of the visual or emotional style you're going for. But it's expensive and it's not really necessary. One time I was shooting in a location, and a police helicopter showed up for 45 minutes, and we just had to wait for it to go away.
Oh, I guess that's the unpredictable nature of filming on location.
Yeah, you just have to wait. There are a lot of programs now, I don't know, that you can get rid of bad sound It's not easily, but it is possible. And that's kind of the big thing that I'm about now is showing people that the tools to change the world are really available to everyone now. And it's just a matter of using them. If you have a mobile, you can make a documentary that someone did make a documentary that won an Academy Award, and he shot it on his iPhone.
Wow.
So that's the world now.
Yeah, and times changed so much, really, even in the last, 10 or 20 years. Well, even 10 years ago, I can't imagine you saying that someone won an Academy Award for a film filmed on an iPhone.
Right. Phone. Yeah, and the iPhone was considerably worse than the kind you can buy now.
Wow. So we actually have this at our fingertips. That's amazing.
Yeah, and actually, I think you can get the tools to edit the movie on the phone too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you can have an entire edit suite, including the whole production of everything on the phone.
Maybe I can ask you about that a bit later. We haven't quite got to how we're going to edit our films yet. We're very much in that pre-production stage, but yeah, the editing will be the fun part afterwards. And as you said earlier in the interview, you can expect to spend quite a bit of time in editing. Is that right?
Well, let me put it this way. So there's two phases that you have the luxury of spending time in if you're doing the work. The first is during the writing. It doesn't really apply to documentaries as much because, again, you have to find what the story is based on what the footage that you've got. But for narrative fiction, you want to spend most of the time in the screenwriting phase, because that's every single word you put in, whether it's someone speaking it or a phrase like "the earth explodes." Okay, now you have to figure out how to show the earth exploding, and that might be a $20 million 3 sentences.
Right.
Or 3 words, or 2 words actually. Yeah, the earth explodes. So that's 3 words. 3 words, $20 million. So in the script phase, you get to determine the budget. Once you start filming, that's generally when money really starts to flow. You have to hire locations, you have to hire people, you have to get permits. Documentaries, not as much, because they're kind of covered under journalistic laws, at least in the United States. You can film more places with a documentary than you can with a narrative feature. Again, journalism. But generally, the filming process is where things tend to get expensive, because you have to feed people, you have to transport people. It's just prohibitive. Whereas the writing process and the editing process can be largely solitary, done on stuff that you have with your own time. And really, like I said, once in the edit bay, you want to find the story and make it as tight as you can, so that it expresses what you want to say as best as it possibly can. And you'll also want to show it to other people. So that they can say, you know what, I understand what you were getting at, but I didn't feel that at all when you showed me the movie. And you might have to suck it up and say, we didn't get it, or I need to change the edit, or this isn't working at all. But the point is, even if you do have a catastrophic failure where you can't at all tell the story you have effectively to the people that you show it to, even in failure, you're going to learn a lot. And because the tools are so accessible, you can just delete it and start again. And the first movie that I made will not be shown. And it took over a year of my life to do that. But that's just yeah, I learned how to make movies. I learned the logistics of the back end of scheduling, of coordinating, of how to edit things, like what it's like. I switched from editing 15-minute, 10-minute stuff to a 90-minute movie, and coordinating everything and what it actually takes. And once you know how to do it, it's like, okay, just replicate and scale out.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you were to give 3 pieces of advice to young people wanting to make films that will change the world, what would it be?
Easily the first one is know what you want to say. And you know what you want to say because of what you care about. Filmmaking is prohibitively difficult, and it's expensive with time. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of work, and you want to find something that you'll care about for a year, because it's going to take that long to get what you want good. And it's going to be something that you're going to have to keep caring about for a year. Otherwise, you will find yourself in a position of like, you know, this story just doesn't mean anything to me anymore because you went based on what someone else cares about or what you think people would care about. And those are not good reasons to do things. Your passion needs to come through as a filmmaker. And that will only happen if you deeply, deeply care about something. And the more personal it gets, the more specific a story that you can tell, the more specific to a location or a place, the more powerful it is. So that is, I don't know if that's 1 or 2 or 3, but that, just say that's 1.
Yeah, so what I
Go ahead.
got from that is that you need to know what, possibly 2, you need to know what it is that you're passionate about, and be passionate about it enough for it to continue to be interesting to you for a long time.
Yeah, that's the biggest. I would say that's the biggest thing. And then also be prepared to fail because you're going to. Everyone does. Everyone you've ever heard of who's famous has. You just don't hear about their failures. You will almost never see a person's first film. You will see, like, it's like the Olympics. People don't just get up and decide to be in the Olympics. They've been training for 10 years and then they show up. Like the really movies that you hear about, Hugh Jackman didn't just become Wolverine one day. He was in Australian dramas first, or commercials, or wherever he started, and then slowly segued into Logan. Everyone's that way. He went to school, you know, and that's what it is. So be okay with failure. Failing is an opportunity to learn. Don't be discouraged if it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, then you found what doesn't work, and that's a very useful thing to know too. So that would be, I guess, number 2. Number 3 is remember that it's not as much about you as it is about communicating something important to other people. And if you realize that, that will also help you in the editing phase, because you'll realize that you need to meet people where they're at and communicate something to them that you care about. But it can't just be something that only you care about. It has to also be something or it should be what you care about, but it should also like reach them. So if you say something in a way that's emotionally unapproachable or too high-minded or too abstract, people aren't going to get it, and it won't go anywhere, and it won't have the social impact that you want it to have.
That's a great point. We've been talking about persuasive techniques. So if you're trying to persuade someone to your point of view, actually starting with where they're at and then leading them towards your point of view is actually really helpful, rather than kind of slapping them across the face with, you should think this.
Yeah, and the most powerful form of persuasion in film is emotion. It's the creation of empathy. If you can see someone on screen and you can think, I kind of have that same situation, then you immediately circumvent all of the logical blockades that normally prevent people from seeing something. And you're like, oh, this is a human being and their life experience has value as well. And because of that, I can no longer feel the way I used to feel about them. And then, I mean, like that's change.
Right there. Well, thank you so much for talking with me.
Yeah.
Just before we finish up, is there anything that you feel that I've missed that we didn't ask you about documentaries, about filmmaking, about anything at all that you feel that you should share with us?
I mean, we kind of mentioned it in the before interview, but I guess the tools to make movies are freely available. The passion is harder, and caring about what you do, and striving to make a difference and to make the world a better place for everyone. You can do that. There is no age limit to what this is. There is no intellectual or economic limit anymore. Anybody can choose to change the world, and if they get good at what they do, they can. And if they get the right information and it syncs with culture, and you're having that artistic dialogue thing that I mentioned earlier, there is no limit to the impact that you can have with this unbelievably powerful medium.
Wow, that is a very positive note to end on. Thank you again, Jon, for your time, and we'll let you know how we go with our documentaries.
Yeah, and if you have questions, you know, I'm not always available on video, but I can answer questions via email.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jon.
Yep.